Welcome back, David.
So sorry. So let's reel back a little bit. You're talking about the front chokes and stuff, and then
Yeah,
you found your stride, exactly where you're going with this.
yeah. So no, yeah, front chokes are a pretty silly technique, right? Because they make the attacker very vulnerable, right? So if someone's attacking you with a front choke, unless your arms are shorter than theirs, like they're not protecting their face at all, right? If someone attacked me with a front choke, I would punch them in the face, and it would solve the problem. But the way that the right um the way that jujitsu solves that problem, I was talking about the really like self defensey.
Yeah, like
Um,
the balance, and if you put the pendulum too far in the self-defense corner,
right. So fundamental. There's a lot of fundamental principles about fighting that we get from wrestling, Greco, judo, the really simple stuff, like standing up straight or bending over. We were talking about that this week. Um, uh, in wrestling, if you bend, the reason that wrestlers bend over is to hide their hips, right? But you don't see people bending over for very long in judo competitions because when you bend over, you give your opponent leverage over your base, right? Now, maybe that's a good thing. Maybe you can use that, but that's usually the moment where in a judo comp they get thrown, right? But like think about
right?
how you would teach that. You should teach that to your jujitsu students so that they understand, look, if I stand up straight, it's very difficult to throw me, but it's easier to pick me up because my hips are exposed. But if I bend over, it's easier to throw me, even though it's difficult to pick me up because my hips are hidden, but my shoulders give the person leverage over my base.
That, that
Instead of
makes good.
teaching like hand techniques, like the defending of the front choke by bringing the elbow over and clearing the arms and then turning that into a double. I mean, that's okay, but the
Right.
student who learns that ends up like memorizing the steps and not using principles and concepts in order to win the fight. Like I'm always teaching my students to like constantly attack their opponent's base. Like, yeah, sure, it sucks that their arm is around your head, but it doesn't matter so much once you pick them up.
Oh, okay, that makes good. That makes a good point because then you can clear the legs and you know,
Right.
or dump
If you
them.
remove right, if you remove their base, then it just doesn't matter. Like, yes, it 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 sucks that someone that while you were trying to sweep them, they put their hand out on the mat. However, now that they put their hand on the mat, they've given you a triangle.
There's yeah, yeah. I actually won a tournament on that. I think the same move you're
Nice.
talking about. um, I like you're talking my language here because this is kind of the same concepts that go through my head when I'm training. I remember for a long time at Blue Belt, while people were worrying about different guards, I was kind of trying to keep a self-defense mindset and like what would work. And you know, I actually helped a lot of MMA fighters get ready for fights too. So that also helped me keep a realistic, thought of like where punches come from. A lot of
Mm,
bicep control when you're on your back. That way you can
yes.
control the arms. So I love the fact that you seem to come from like uh, a realistic background, which not to shit on the schools that are sports jiu-jitsu or the schools that are no-gi, because they all got purpose too, and they're all just what cup of tea what it just depends on what cup of tea you want. Um, how do you balance competitors, hobbyists, and like the fitness gurus or the people going to your gym for fitness? How do you balance all those people? Like
Um,
their styles, I guess, more specifically.
yeah, I guess the short answer is that I don't. Right. I teach the jujitsu that I have the most conviction for.
Okay.
And
That makes sense.
and and so like if I was a painter, I wouldn't paint what people wanted to see. I would paint what I painted the best, right? Like that.
Okay.
That's what being an art. That's what being an artist is, right? Like you express your deepest self, right? in
Yeah,
in
I mean,
whatever mode that is, right?
you
And
killed
so
that answer so easily.
and
I
so
mean,
like
that's such a solid answer. I'm sorry, I keep cutting you off. I think there's still a delay.
yeah, when I have students who are like preparing for a tournament, like we're going to be at Grappling Industries on the 8th up here in Chicago. Um, we will focus on what wins tournaments. Um,
Okay.
for the students who like they're really here to learn sport jujitsu. I mean, there's a lot of jujitsu that's really entertaining. Like barambolos are really entertaining. They're so much fun. Rolling back takes are so much fun. Uh, uh, all those the overlapping grips in the 10th planet system, man, that those are incredible. Um, so I mean, jujitsu for most people is a leisure activity, right? And we definitely have fun, but I just make it part of the conversation that, hey, look, um, you, uh, this is not pretend. Like we are learning how to hurt people here, and I want to make sure that um, if you ever have to use this, that you're able to hurt the other person, and the other person is not able to hurt you, because that's what you're really here for, right? So we're gonna have some fun. We're gonna win some tournaments, but let's not lose sight of the reason that this thing exists. Like so if you look at the history of jujitsu in Japan, right? A lot of it was um, serfs weren't allowed to own swords, and so they had to figure out how to defend themselves without them, right? Or
Right.
samurai, right? Samurai who were allowed to own swords still had a need for something that would work if the sword broke, right? And despite how much people revere the katana, right? If you talk to a metallurgist, they'll say, well, the steel was not the best, right? in comparison to like
Right.
modern steels or steels from other part, right? So it probably happened pretty often that a samurai would have a broken sword and would have to make do, right? That's where his jujitsu comes in, right? Okay, let's
The
take the
all
guy
shit
down.
moment.
Yeah, yes.
Could
Okay,
you imagine
let's
that? Like
let's
you
put
got this like
yes,
samurai in front of you and your sword breaks and it's like, ah shit. What do I do now?
right. So I mean, but that's where it comes in. So you
Right.
you close the distance, you get on the inside the slashing radius, right? And once you get control of the arm, you also control the head. You step through with your hips. Here's Ogoshi, right? And then once you have him on his back, you hold him in scarf hold while you pull out another dagger, a shorter one, because who carries two swords? And you stab him in his neck, right? And that's what jujitsu was for, right? It was how how do we solve this problem of interpersonal combat, like a fight between two people with just our hands, and breaking arms and choking people or holding them down while you stab them it's part of the canon, right? So let's not, as
Okay.
we go to regular jiu-jitsu class in suburban America, let's not forget that's what it's for, and that it has the power to be that impactful. It's not just people in colorful tights and rash guards breaking each other's ankles.
No. It's it's a beautiful sport, man. It's like badass, but like gentle at the same time. Like you're not you could definitely get hurt, but it can definitely help a lot in a lot of different aspects.
Oh yeah, I completely agree. And I think that so I should say, as an adult, I have never been in a fight that I didn't choose, which is to say, like I've not been in a street fight. I've not had someone jump me in a bar. I've not been like jumped at the gas station. Uh, there've been a couple of situations where it's kind of close, but I've never had to like hurt somebody who didn't pay an entry fee, right? Right, right,
Okay.
right. Or I've never gotten hurt without paying an entry fee. Let's put it like that too, right? Because I'm not invincible, of course. Um,
Right.
and so I think the more important part is like think about COVID, man. How people who were locked in their homes for a while and their only out was their secret gym training partners, or
I
like
can neither
I
confirm nor deny I did that.
yeah no I am saying I did it and they can come get me, right? You can have my jiu-jitsu gym when you pry it from my cold dead hands, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
We had that for like 2 weeks in Florida.
Yeah. Oh yeah, Illinois was not better.
Dude, I heard like up north, like I don't know if you were following like the gym Gordon Ryan was at, or even in Canada where like Farasa Hobbies gym and like it was
Yeah.
pretty crazy. And a lot of these guys were doing it like secretly and
Yeah.
getting caught slash secretly and like yeah, it's just it's nuts. That was a crazy time. We only were truly like maybe a month had to worry about that until it was like, okay, we're not really enforcing this. So just do the
Yeah.
right. But another question I got for you being a gym owner now and stuff, like kind of got into this on I don't remember what episode on the podcast so far, but like gauging promotions, is that a marketing tactic or is that a real curriculum? Because it seems like it's kind of like an out of whack system across the board. Not saying your gym's out of whack or my gym's out of whack. I'm just saying like in general, it's kind of like a crazy. It's like it's like a weird subject because you give out promotions, but it seems a lot of times it's could be used as to keep students, retain students, market, keep them interested, but it could also be used as like a real curriculum. And if it's a real curriculum, there really is no curriculum. So it's kind of like your like the owner or the professor's choice. Does that make sense?
Yeah. It does
Like,
make sense.
okay, because I felt like that I had a hard time explaining how fucked up or how out of whack this system kind of is to me.
Well, no, I
Like,
you know what? I think it's both. I think it's both flawed, like deeply flawed, but in that same way perfect. And I'll explain why.
hell yeah, I want to
So
hear this.
so think about judo. Judo has there are a fixed number of official techniques in the judo book, and they have a committee of people in Japan who says this is judo and only this is judo. And so if you color outside the lines at the competition, they'll DQ you.
Okay.
However, like judo is a very simple objective. Put the person on their patch, right? If the patch hits the mat, that's ippon. Yes?
Yeah, 100%.
Okay. So how many ways are there to actually achieve that? There's an infinite number of ways.
Yeah,
However, however, there are less than 100 official judo techniques. Does this make sense?
100 judo techniques, but an infinite amount of ways to put them on their back.
Yes. So
Okay.
a committee of people has decided that this fixed number of techniques is what we will grade you on. And only your ability to do these techniques determines whether you will eventually be a judo black belt.
Okay. Yeah, I see where you're going.
Okay. So jiu-jitsu is a whole lot bigger than that. No one can point to a technique and say, that's not jiu-jitsu. They can only point to whether you submitted your opponent and how good your opponent is, right? So if I go and submit Joe the plumber down the road who just started 6 months ago, I should probably be able to do that at this point. If I go and I submit Gordon Ryan, right, that's something altogether different. I think you need belts in order, and the you need belts and you need the larger community in order to pressure test uh in order to pressure test how good your jiu-jitsu is, in order for you to get feedback on how much you've learned. However,
Oh,
I don't think that there can be a fixed standard because jiu-jitsu is infinite and judo is finite. In order for us to have a fixed standard, we have to be finite. That would not be
oh,
good for jiu-jitsu.
no, it would not.
Right. And so it's
What-
good that each instructor has the ability to say, okay, I'm going to give belts based on how well they do the techniques that I think are essential. Right? Like you might be able to get a black belt from a guy who loves to pull guard in the gi, I don't know John Thomas, but think about John Thomas's style. Uh, he likes to pull guard, he likes to pull on the collar, likes to pull on the sleeve, and he submits people from the guard all the time. If if you went to a if you went to a jiu-jitsu school run by a guy who was a former wrestling state champ, it would feel very different.
Oh yeah.
And each of those instructors ought to be able to determine what a black belt looks like from their school and then pressure test it in competition. And the more different kind of black belts we have, the better.
So that's putting value back into the competition. Is if I know we're kind of talking about competition points and stuff, but that's a good point that does add value to competition because if you've got Joe Schmo who promotes you for knowing an armbar and a butterfly sweep, and then you got you know John Smith who promotes you after a 100 moves, after you're adept
Yeah,
on bottom. Well, if
yeah,
you put both of them as blue belt in a tournament, it's gonna look like a pretty whack like match between the two students. But
yes,
if you're simultaneously keeping your students, you know, competing, I guess that's a good way to put it. It's keeping the ranking honest or relatively honest.
yes, yes, yeah.
That's a
I
good.
think
I never really thought of that before, but that is a really good point because in my head it's just kind of like out of whack because there is no curriculum, but at the same time, like if you want to do IBJJF, you got to register your belt, you know.
yeah, yeah. And
So
so I don't think that there's a way to fix the belt ranking system without destroying jujitsu.
yeah,
And so
and
I think that we should celebrate diversity in that. Like, not all purple belts are the same, right? Like, man, we've got a guy who comes to Fit to Defend. So I still attend Fit to Defend, even though I have my own school. We got a guy who came from Henzo's, and
was
like
he a beast?
he's a killer. He's a killer. And like I was
I
rolling with
bet.
him last week, and I said, man, I need to learn some jujitsu because
Oh
he he
shit.
just he just did what he wanted, and I was really frustrated about it, and I went home not feeling so great. It was like
Yeah.
what's the joke that like you drive home without playing the radio? Right?
Oh,
Yeah,
I got a funny
it was
story about that.
it was one of those. It was one of those, and like I've done all right with this guy, but like he's really good, and I learn a lot about holes in my game from him, right? And so we're both brown belts, and but he was this way when he showed up from New York. And so, like, obviously, a Henzo purple belt is not the same as a fit to defend brown belt, even though I would like to say that it is. And this is an N of one, so right, or an N of two, right? So
Yeah,
like, I don't. This is not an indictment of Scott's promotion, right? Uh, but I mean that only makes us better to realize that a guy who went to the best school in the country knows some stuff that it might have a better game than us in some areas, and so we need to tighten up. And
that's
without
awesome.
without that difference, how would we have known, right? It doesn't make sense to be proud about that. It makes
Right.
sense to use it as a learning tool.
Like, oh shit, they're different over there.
Yes,
You
yes.
you know, so you know how that drive home with no music on?
Mm-hmm.
So so picture you and that brown belt had to drive home together. And
Oh.
uh so that happened to my friend and I a while back. We were on a team together, and him and I like got into it this is when we were a lot younger, but egos were clashing for sure. And we got into it. We are doing a little bit of sparring. One thing led to another. He started taking advantage of his strengths. I started taking advantage of my strengths a little bit more, and it got like pretty intense. Like I almost got knocked out. He was getting mad, and class was over, and we had to drive all the way from Tampa to where I live, which is about 40 minutes home together. And it was just
Oh.
both him and I pissed off that same exact thing. But it's just funny because both the dudes are in the car together, so there's like no, we're just like looking out the window. I could we're both looking forward to getting home, and then it wasn't until like the last 10 minutes we like I forgot how we cracked the ice on each other, but it was just super fucking funny because it was frustration, that ego was bruised. We are both pissed at each other still, and then at the same time, like, we were best friends, so we had to get over it, and it was just like.
Yes.
But then we fucking eventually do it. Like the last 10 minutes, we are just I told him that he almost knocked me out. I was like, dude, I was loopy. My feet were so weak. And he was like, I couldn't tell. And I'm like, I was trying to make it look like I wanted more so you'd leave me alone. But then it was good times. But, it's a good, I like how that frustration is good because it usually leads to, I like getting frustrated on the mat. I don't like losing my cool. I like staying disciplined, but I like it when
Mm,
I got to go home and that sting sits a little bit because that sting usually does motivate me to look into the problem or the issue.
yeah.
It's
Yeah.
not, and that's a great thing I feel like about. I don't know. I was going to ask you about brown belt in your eyes, but like, once I became purple belt, it seems it was either shortly before or shortly after. I feel like it's you kind of get to the point where you can learn to problem solve on your own in a sense. You don't know
Yes.
everything, but you kind of
Uh-huh.
learn how to learn.
Yes.
Do you agree with
Before
that
I
or?
Yeah, before I answer that question, let me I want to reflect on something that you said. You told the story about driving home with this guy. Um I watched a video of two guys fighting at a gas station the other day. Right? They had some sort of disagreement, who knows what it was. Oh, it was really it was entertaining because as these two guys were boxing each other, um one guy, his gun fell out of his belt and slid across the pavement, right?
Oh
And
shit.
he didn't go for his gun. He continued to box with the other guy, whatever disagreement they were having. Like, he thought it was important to beat the guy instead of killing him. And so the guy who had the gun ended up losing the boxing match. And but the guy who won, who, like, he knocked him down and asked him if he'd had enough. And the guy said, "Yeah, I've had enough." And then he helped him up, and they hugged each other, and then went on their way.
Oh shit.
Now, I mean, like, so I am not advocating for, like, for that sort of hooligan behavior. Fighting in public is a
Hurting
bad thing to
people.
do.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. Okay. Okay. Here's what I am saying: men get closer to each other through struggle.
And hashing it
And
out. Yeah.
Yes, yes. Oh, and like I don't have to be mad at you about anything. Like it would help if I was mad at you. Um, uh, when when two boys get into a fight, like there used to be. My brother went to the Air Force Academy, and they had a boxing course that he had to take, and so he had, like several times a week he had to go and like take boxing as a course, and he got a grade for it. And it
That's
used to be like if
badass.
you can see black and white photos of that happening in public schools all across the nation, right? Like that used to be a thing, and
Yeah.
that used to be a thing that we sort of understood about boys, and uh, we sort of helped them get through that so that they didn't do that as men, right? But that is missing, like with the exception of wrestling. Wrestling, I suppose, is a is a decent substitute for that, but like you have to self select for it. Anyway, I'm saying
Yeah. It,
boys and men get closer to each other through combat with each other, and it only even if they have a genuine disagreement with each other, a little bit of safe physical combat seems to solve the disagreement. And after we've decided that it really is expensive to disagree, we choose not to disagree with each other because fighting was an option.
yeah.
And so
And
like I think that it's just a healthy thing for people, but especially men, to do. And you guys who had to ride home in the car together after having that experience were probably closer than you had ever been after
it's
that
de-
than you were
it's
before
definitely a
that.
great story to reflect on. But yeah, I mean, we were close beforehand. Um, it was just like I don't think a lot of people get it, and I think like you were saying how it's a boxing course in the in the military. I think that as you're saying that, I was just kind of reflecting on like whether I think that would be a good thing in like a high school or something, you know, because in high school there's like a lot of fights, you got young kids and stuff like that. I wonder if
Oh
like
yeah.
reaching like hitting the problem head on and making like a boxing class or like something where you know you could hash it out safely or in a safe manner, and then you might
Yeah.
not have as much like violence in school or in class. It just my head was kind of thinking down those lines, and exactly like you
Well,
said, you get that experience of like, okay, we boxed it out, like we're cool, and you know, we go from there. I think
so
that'd be
like
fun.
imagine if you approach the violence problem in a similar way that the school system approaches like the sex problem, right? So you have when I haven't been to sex education class in a high school in 2023, but I imagine that they give them some pretty explicit instructions on like, okay, this is how it works, and this is what some of the risks are, and here's how you mitigate the risks, and talk to your parents, right? Okay, so your parents will
Right.
tell you what the will layer on some lessons on morality, whatever is important to them, on top of the information that we've already given you. Okay, so they do not ignore the fact that like sex between high schoolers exists, but they do ignore the fact that conflict between high schoolers exists. There is no
Yeah.
way, unless you're on the wrestling team, and again you have to self-select for that. There's no way for kids to first understand how to do it. Like there's no acknowledgement. There's no acknowledgement that in a fight between two people that one of them was right, like that there was an aggressor and
Yeah.
a defender, and that they have a that they have the privilege that they have the right to defend their bodies with violence. And here's how you should defend. Here's an effective way to defend your body with violence. Instead, they send both of them to the office and they say, you know, fighting isn't allowed in school. But I imagine that there are some circumstances where they they don't acknowledge that you were right to hit the person back who hit you.
Oh, it happens. And actually, in my high school, it seemed like that a lot. Like, they definitely didn't focus on who was the aggressor, and it was just almost like almost like hockey. Like, all right, you both did it, you're out of here. Like it.
Yes, yes, yes. And furthermore, they didn't give you any instruction on how to be effective in that way, right? You had to depend on if you took martial arts or your dad taught you how to box in the driveway or whatever.
Sometimes martial
Um,
arts works against you too. It seems like sometimes because you do martial arts, you're the one in trouble.
yeah, I'm not so much. Yeah. Well, here's the thing. Here's what I tell my kids: you're welcome to fight if the cost of not fighting is worse than the penalty. So if if I have a pretty large son, right? He's like 6'4". I'm not 6'4". He's like the kid. He's 15 years old. He towers over me, right? I imagine
Okay.
that if he got in a fight in school, that it would be with another pretty big kid. He's the size of a grown man, and a grown man like has the ability to kill another grown man with his bare hands. Like that's what it is.
Yep.
And so death is worse than detention. Death is worse than suspension. And so I expect that if someone attacked him, that despite the fact that he got in trouble because he's doing a cost benefit analysis of what it would cost him to be hurt, that he would defend himself, damn the consequences. Because he has a
Yeah.
responsibility to defend his own body, right? So I'm not saying that
Agree.
violence is good. I'm just saying that there's a cost benefit analysis that has to be done. And when someone tries to hurt you, then it doesn't so much matter that you would get in trouble. You know, if someone tried
Okay.
to hurt my kids, like I'm not concerned at all at what the prosecutor would have to say in the courtroom about how I'm a martial arts expert and I probably shouldn't have hurt this guy. If someone opens that opens that physical conversation with me, like whatever comes out, and the thing that I'm most concerned about is protecting myself and the people I'm responsible for. And so,
Uh,
like, yeah, I don't think that people should when like I tell my students in my class that no one has the right to hurt you, and you should never let the rules prevent you from protecting yourself.
okay.
So,
I
like,
always come from the standpoint that sometimes they look at just because you're a trained martial artist that for whatever reason, and I've just seen it a few times in courtrooms, you defended yourself, but hey, you're a fighter and you might have won because you defend yourself and you train for it. But I've seen like a lot of times in schools and like, in the courtroom that it seems that the people I've seen it held against people. I'm sure there's plenty of cases where it's not, and I'm sure exactly the way you're saying it, there's plenty of cases where it's like, well, you poked the bear or you came at this
yes, yeah.
person. Like, but like I've just seen it used against people a couple of times, and it's kind of sad to say like someone goes for those cases, someone who goes and trains and might legitimately be concerned or might legitimately have a reason to be concerned. Like maybe they live in a rough area or they've got specific people who keep fucking with them. It would truly suck to see. It truly sucks like if the system works against them when they're just trying to survive.
Yeah,
Like
I
Cain
agree.
Velasquez. Yeah, David just said example Cain Velasquez.
Oh, yeah. Well, hey, maybe you should be more careful about about maybe you should be more careful about uh, uh hurting people's kids, right? If you hurt people's kids,
Yeah,
people tend to like there
that
was
what a screwed up situation that is too.
yeah, there was I won't say much about this. There was a case in Louisiana where a karate instructor kidnapped one of the kids and then flew him out of state for the purpose
Shit.
of molesting the kid, right?
What?
And the state police they were able to track down the karate instructor and they rescued the kid and they were flying him back to Louisiana to stand trial. And this was in the 80s. I believe it was in the 80s, like the early 80s. And the kid's dad pretended to use a payphone in the airport. And when they marched this guy past the wall of payphones, TV cameras running, the guy, the father, hung up the payphone that he was pretending to talk on, turned around and shot the molester dead in front of the police were escorting the molester arm in
Damn.
arm, and the molester was handcuffed, and he turned around and shot him. And you can hear on the tape the police officer who was escorting the prisoner yell out the father's name. He knew him by first name.
Oh shit.
Uh, right, and so obviously they had to charge the father with murder because like there was no question that he did it. I think they convicted him on manslaughter, but they gave him a suspended sentence, so he never spent a day in jail.
What?
Never spent a day in prison. Because what is a father supposed to do in that situation? Like that. No matter what the rule book says you ought to do, that is intolerable to a parent, and
Yeah.
everybody gets it, right?
Oh no. That's people were giving Kane a lot of props for that because they were all saying like everyone says that they would do it, but Kane actually was able
Yeah,
to do it. And in
yeah,
my eyes, he did the right thing. Um,
yeah.
Other
So
than the
I'm
fact that he's not around for his son, but which
yeah.
sucks. But
So I'm not going to go so far as to go on record and say that that to endorse vigilante violence, but I think that this is one of those. If a parent doesn't do that, they're doing it against their fundamental human nature, and you ought to be grateful that they didn't. Like I don't think that you can point fingers at a Cain Velasquez sort of character and say that was wrong because the instinct to do it is so deep that the instinct to do it
that
is so deep that you don't
it
have a reasonable expectation that they won't.
it's almost mentally damaging to the parent because
Yes.
you would instinctually, and that's the angle I'm coming from, pretty similar, is like your instinct would tell you like this molester or whatever potentially ruined your child's life pretty early on.
Yeah.
And also, this guy deserves to pay a price that he is almost like, how do you make that guy pay an appropriate price? So,
Yeah.
I'm coming from like a same standpoint of you are going against like the amount of stress and discipline, and it's almost mentally damaging to a parent who has to fight that too. So, one person who hurt one kid is also potentially hurting a whole family.
Yes.
So,
Uh-huh.
and so that's my understanding of it too. Like vigilantism, no, I don't think that. But as far as like him going with the nature of the situation, I don't know. I mean, I get what you're saying about not going on record and saying like I condone going out and finding people who've done this to people and hurting them, but it you said it pretty well. The expectation of not of just sitting back and watching it how it folds out is a pretty hard thing to ask a person to do as well.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
to sit there and watch that play out. Um, well, we're hitting about an hour, or I don't know, probably over that. I know we've had some technical difficulties with this one. It kind of threw me off. Hour 30. Damn, David's on top of it, dude.
Yeah. Yeah.
He's like Jamie with with Joe Rogan. Joe's got a
you
Jamie, I've
you
got a David in the corner.
you asked a question about something about this is what it was. No, you asked a question about like what my approach how my approach to jiu-jitsu has changed like inside a brown belt.
Yes.
So
Um,
go ahead. Ask it again
I go.
so I can answer it precisely.
Okay, so my context was like the different, just basically the stepping stone or the wall or the main difference from purple to brown. Like when you think a purple belt is
Oh,
ripe enough for brown, what's the next step type of thing?
so um, let me tell you what it was for me. I'm not sure that like this is well as a brown belt. I can't promote people to brown belt anyway. I have to wait until I'm a black belt to promote people to brown belt. And so
Right.
I'm not yet thinking about how I would promote how I would grade someone from purple to brown. But here's how it changed for me. So as a purple belt, I was very motivated to to execute the techniques that I knew with greater precision. Right, like I should know all everything should be at the right angle with the right tension. I should be setting traps. I should be um, uh, following very precise sequences that lead me to submission. As a brown
Okay.
belt, it's completely different. Like I am completely unconcerned with with submission chains. So that with sequences, not submission chains. With I'm completely unconcerned with sequences. Sequences are still important. However, I am concerned with the 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 fundamental strength of jujitsu, which is that it stacks positional advantages on top of each other until submission is inevitable. So I'm like, so think about the difference between like chess and Go, right? So in chess, you have like all these players, and the players have specific moves, and you follow sequences to take the king, right? And I mean, you
Right.
break down their defenses. Okay, there's a I'm not sure if you've ever played it before, but I used to play it and I found it very entertaining. There's a Chinese board game called Go,
I've
and
never played
in
it.
that, yeah, you got to it is don't buy a board, play it on your phone so that the phone will keep score because it's got a sort of complicated scoring system. Anyway, the point of this game is to just take up space on the board, and you do it by encircling your opponent's pieces, right? And so
Okay.
it, as you try to encircle them, they're trying to encircle you, and whoever encircles the other takes the pieces on the inside. So my jujitsu has changed in that way, in that what I'm trying to do is like take positional advantages away from you, right? I'm constantly attacking your base. I'm being the top man as much as I can. I'm rolling you on your back constantly. Like if my hands and feet aren't in the right place, that's okay. If I roll you to the middle of your back, the least you have the least mobility. You have less mobility there than in any other position. If I can just manage to do that, then as long as you stay there, I should be able to maintain a stalemate. And you're going
Okay.
to work to get off the middle of your back. And the more you work, the more tired you're going to get. And eventually, you're just going to give me something because you're going to be so desperate. This is very
You're
different
making me
than
think of like a boa slowly constricting.
yes, yes. Just look, think about uh, uh, Gordon's last match with Penna. He wanted to just get in mount and grind the guy out, and he was
Just
unconcerned
cooking
with
them,
submitting him.
cooking them.
Right? Yes, yes, yes. And so it's a completely different way to do jujitsu, right? Like instead of submitting someone that is working against you, who's not tired, instead of outsmarting them, no matter the guy's size, I'm gonna roll him to his back. I'm gonna push on him and push on him and push on him until he really just gives up. Now,
Mm.
I still have all the skills I had before at purple belt. Like if as he tries to come up, um, I need to install one of those sequences in order to finish the fight, I can still do that. However, because I did all the work of being on top and cooking him, or even in the guard, like think about this in the guard. The guard is such a wonderful, the full guard is such a wonderful position. If
Like, are you talking about closed guard or just like open
yeah,
guard? Or just
close guard, yeah, close guard. The
okay,
guy who is in close guard has almost zero submission options. Not zero, but almost zero. And the ones that are in that like non-zero category are really awful, right? They hand you arm bars or triangles.
right.
So why have we neglected the guard when it's you're resting, you have control over the person's posture? Why aren't we making them work and making them desperate to get out of the guard until they do something stupid and then submitting them just like that? The
You're
whole
talking
like
the most lazy guard defender ever. I just sit. I'm so lazy in a guard, in a closed guard.
yes, and yeah. Well, I mean, do you mean in the top of closed guard or bottom?
When someone's got me closed and closed guard, dude, I just try to maintain like my posture as best as possible until they get so
Yeah.
sick of trying stuff that I can get either my knee up in the guard
Uh huh.
or they go to open up and then I just like explode out or something. I don't know. I play a very lazy. I don't try to break the guard. I'm just like, all right, let's play the
Well,
posture game and tire those legs out.
here's the thing. Like, unless there are not many people in my limited experience, there are not many people who really know how to posture inside the guard.
Oh, really?
And yeah, it's pretty easy to break people's posture. And
Yeah.
so you can put them in a position where they're fighting for their life real fast and they'll do something stupid.
Yeah, I mean, you got a lot of things on your side if you got your clothes, you got gravity and you got like leverage points and all sorts of stuff to work with,
And
that's for sure.
and every time they try to escape the guard, they compromise their base.
Yep.
So if you just sit there, if you sit on your hips, I'm gonna topple you over your knees, right? Even if you're if you sit on your hips are low, your shoulders are high. Your back is a lever for me to topple you, right?
This is true. Yep. Oh yeah.
Okay. If you have a broken guard, like you're hinged at the hips and your head and shoulders are down low near me, it's easy to roll you, right? Because our centers of gravity are pretty close.
Of course,
But
yeah.
your head and arms are also closer to my hips than they were before. And as soon as I install high guard, like the end is near.
I love high guard. I do love high guard.
Yeah, it's pretty awesome.
I don't like being in it, but I do like it.
Yeah. And so like being in someone's guard is like really putting your head in the lion's mouth.
That's a good
And
that it is like a forgotten like because all these freaking guards have like all these different guards, a new one every week it seems like people have forgotten about closed guard. It's like mostly open or De La Hiva. It's weird.
I agree. I agree. Closed guard is the bee's knees. It's awesome.
It's
It's
so
so
fundamental
awesome.
too.
Yeah, yeah. And I think that we neglected it just because we got bored, not because there's something wrong with it.
Yeah, that's it. Oh, David's saying that in Chicago everyone does closed guard. That's funny.
Oh, really?
Maybe it's like the South Florida thing. But that's a good point. It probably is more of like a flashy, we got bored of it type thing because you really do have a lot of options if someone is in your guard. You do have sweeps, submissions, leverage. You can wear somebody out while you're laying on your back. You do have a lot going for you. So I don't see why you would just ignore it or not do it. When I pull closed guard, it's to get a breath. But I'm usually more get
Yeah.
back to my feet. because none of the professors are Brazilian. Oh, that's is it because David? Is that what you're saying? It's because none of the Brazilian guys make it all the way up north. Okay, yeah, that's funny. It's a good point. But hey, man, kind of running out of time. I do appreciate you doing this. It's really cool to see your aspect and seem like you really thought about it. Like you really do think deep about it. You made some really good points, and I do respect how, from talking to you, I do respect how your outlook on jiu-jitsu and running a school and how class works, and kind of making a more practical system. It sounds like you sound very practical, and thanks for your time and for doing this. I don't know, David, did you have fun? Oh, David's got a question. This is funny. It's
Hop
like
in,
I'm
David.
talking to. Oh, he's typing it. It's kind of funny. I feel like I got this little bubble popping up in the corner, and it's like we're going live.
Yeah, David, you just jump in. You don't have to type the whole question. But hey, but like, look, I really appreciate the opportunity to talk about jujitsu. Like this, it's a super special thing to me. And anytime someone wants to talk to me about it, whether it's on a forum like this or like they're just stopping me at the gas station, right?
Right.
I am always excited to talk about jujitsu, and either I'll get down there. David has invited me down to Florida, and I would love to come. Or if you come up here, you've always got a place to train.
Oh, dude, that's awesome. Yeah, I've never been to Chicago. I've only heard good things about it.
Wait
So
till
we'll
it's
have to
warm.
connect. Yeah. I don't know, bro. Like I'm like one of the few people where I just want to I like the cold. I don't know. Maybe because I grew
Oh,
up in
really?
Florida. So yeah, I just
Mm.
grew up in, so I haven't seen snow too many times. So when I see it, it's like special.
Yeah, you won't say
But
that
like
after living in Chicago for a year.
that's what everyone says, dude.
Yeah,
But
but yeah.
like, what's your question, David?
Yeah, so, as I'm kind of listening to you guys, Edward, one thing that kind of comes up is, how did you get rid of the fear of kind of opening up a jiu-jitsu school and sort of going away from, quote unquote, full real job?
It's a good
Because,
question.
like it's a difficult business to run, and it's sort of like the odds seem to be stacked against you in that type of business because there seems to be, a martial arts school at every,
Yeah,
plaza. Like, how do you
yeah,
sort of say, I'm ready. Uh, I know there's a fear. I know there's concern, but like I'm getting rid of that and I'm doing it anyway. Like,
yeah.
diving full in.
It's a solid
It was
question.
a conversation that I had with a guy who you may have heard of. His name is John Frankel. John is a white guy. He went to Harvard and studied Korean literature. Right. So I only mentioned his ethnicity to like show you what a peculiar sort of personality he is. Anyway, so he got a PhD in Korean literature, moved to Korea to teach Koreans Korean literature.
Hmm, that's crazy.
Now, while he was at Harvard, he started while he was at Harvard, he started to study jujitsu and loved it. But then when he moved to Korea, he found out that there were exactly zero Brazilian jiu-jitsu gyms in Korea. So he started one. And now there are around 50, probably more than 50, John Frankel jiu-jitsu gyms in Korea.
Hmm.
So, but his daughter attends college here in the U.S., and so every summer he and his wife fly from Korea and they visit his daughter, and he goes on a seminar tour. And he visited Alpha Jiu Jitsu in Woodstock, which is a tremendous gym run by Dan Hart, who is an awesome dude. Those guys that are all beasts. And so I spent, was it a 1 day or a 2 day? I think it was a 1 day seminar. It was like 8 hours. It was a long seminar. And at the end, I was like, John, this was so awesome. Really appreciate the time that you spent with us. I took a picture with him and I thanked him. And I said to him, this is something that I would love to do professionally. I would like to have a jiu-jitsu gym. And he said, with a very serious look in his face, well, how old are you? And I don't think that he was trying to suggest that I would be too old to open a gym, that at some point you're too old to be any good at it. I think that his point was, and he didn't really drive it home. He didn't like make me feel bad. But the serious look that he gave me a deep conviction that I was running out of time. That like you only have so many days on earth, and if you don't spend it doing something that you love, like if you don't spend it with your family, you don't that like you have just wasted time. That each of the moments of your life have infinite value because they're finite, and you can trade them for cash, but you will always lose out on that deal because cash is finite. The cash is infinite, right? Like the Fed just prints more. Money is infinite and time is finite.
Hmm.
And so anytime you trade time for money, you lose on the deal.
Interesting. It's funny because I said the same thing in our last episode, I believe. No?
Yeah. And he's hitting my heartstrings right now, dude. I'm at the point
And
where
so,
I'm at a 8 to 5 and I'm not really enjoying sitting there thinking like I'm selling myself,
so we all have to eat, and that's inescapable. We all have to eat, and so like you got to make the numbers work. Okay.
Right.
However, if you make the numbers, like if I was a billionaire, you know what I would do all day?
Nothing.
What would you jiu-jitsu?
I'd do jujitsu.
Yeah.
Right. So like I don't have the responsibility of shepherding a fortune of billions of dollars and like trying to squeeze in jujitsu where I can. And so it doesn't make sense to trade the moments of my life for things that I don't value. And I really value jujitsu. Like I don't know. It would take some painful self-searching to like figure out why it's so important, like why it's so soul-filling for me. But I know that it is, and like if I had to pay $1,000 an hour to do jujitsu, I would pay it. Like it wouldn't even be a question. It wouldn't be a question. I would pay it. Like there are no human activities outside of the time that I spend with my family that are more important than jujitsu. Right? There's nothing I enjoy more. And so it becomes a pretty easy decision when the guy looks you in the eye and sort of suggests that you're going to run out of time to do this. Like everybody runs out of time. They run out of physical ability. So there's a guy who goes to Seraphin's. His name is Chris Wojcik. Man, is an incredible guy, super friendly. Is the number 13, 170-pound no-gi jiu-jitsu guy in the world, right? He placed fourth in 2 separate ADCC trials. And
Nice.
he was kind enough to message me and ask me if I wanted to train with him some mornings, right? He's got a small group of guys that he trains with, and he would like, probably because we're on the same team, like, but there's no reason why a guy 20 years older than him should be training with him. And he was still good enough to invite me to come down. So I came down, I trained with him, and it was incredible. But would I be able to enjoy that at 60? like my physical abilities will have seriously declined, even if I spend a lifetime doing jujitsu.
Yeah.
I like it wouldn't be the same experience for
Yep.
him or me, right? He would just beat me worse, right? All right. And so I have this opportunity and the time is ticking on this opportunity while I still have knees that work and my brain works fast and like I'm still as fast and strong as most 20-year-olds to like to try to beat some guys up and
Yep.
and be able to reflect on what that experience was like and put it in the memory bank for keeping forever, right?
Yep.
And take pictures with them after we train and then I get to tell my grandkids and great grandkids, see this guy, he was in Bellator. And see this guy, he went to the UFC. And see this guy, he beat that guy who you don't know. But at least I'll have the story, right?
Yep.
And if I don't spend that time doing it now, I'll be gone forever, and no one will feel sorry for me.
No, man, great answer. That's a great answer. And I think you're being too humble too, because you're like, would I? What I shouldn't be training with that other guy who's really good, man. Like I've rolled with you. You're fucking good.
Thank you. I do. I really appreciate that. I do.
That
Yep.
means I'm
Yep.
running out of time to roll with him too.
Yeah, dude, you gotta come down to Chicago. We gotta set this up.
gotta take that. I would love to go to Chicago, and I think this was a really good conversation. I I can't tell you enough how much I appreciate your time, and if there's anything I can do for you, just let me know, man. I don't know what it is, but feel free to reach out. You've got my number. If there's anything or any favors I can do for you, just reach out. I really do appreciate you taking the time to do this.
Yeah, just save me a roll when I eventually make it down to Florida. How about that?
I'll start stretching now.
Yeah. Awesome.
And David, thanks for connecting us, dude. Appreciate it. And
Yeah,
moderating.
absolutely, guys. Nice to be speaking to both of you.
Yeah,
Good.
man.
Looking forward to seeing you back on the mat, David.
Oh yeah, next week I'm in Chicago, so I'll see you around.
Awesome.
Cool beans,
Cool.
guys. You have a good night.
Yep. Take care.
You too.